Tonight, a new civil rights battle on the courthouse steps in Alabama. A defiant state judge tries to block same-sex marriage, but the Supreme Court clears the way. Chip Reed is in Montgomery. Jerika Duncan on the winter that just won't quit. Meteorologist Eric Fisher says more snow is on the way to the Northeast. The power of the internet. Jan Crawford reports a popular podcast has helped a convicted murderer win a chance at a new trial.
The most incriminating piece of physical evidence against Adnan Syed was a fingerprint.
And Anthony Mason on the Grammys and Sam Smith's big night out.
I want to thank the man who this record is about, who I fell in love with last year. Thank you so much for breaking my heart, because you got me 4 Grammys.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. We're beginning the broadcast tonight with a full-blown civil rights battle in Alabama. Today, most county offices there defied a federal court order allowing same-sex marriage. Many couples were turned away. Some marriage license offices simply did not open. Last night, Alabama's Chief Justice banned same-sex marriage licenses. His ruling also in defiance of the federal court. Alabama would be the 37th state where same-sex marriage is permitted, and in some counties today the licenses were granted. Chip Reed is sorting all of this out for us in Montgomery.
Billy Clark and Carrie Perez, both 26, have been waiting to get married for 4 years. Today they did it after an Alabama judge issued their license.
It feels really good to have people recognize what we've always known to be true. I love you.
Last month, a federal judge struck down Alabama's ban on same-sex marriage, finding it violated the U.S. Constitution. That decision took effect today, but not without judicial chaos.
It's an aberration of our institution in Alabama. It violated Alabama law.
In a defiant challenge to federal authority, Chief Justice Roy Moore of the Alabama Supreme Court ordered Alabama's probate judges not to issue marriage licenses.
I don't like to say anybody shouldn't be happy, but nobody's stopping them from living together. It's about the institution of marriage. And when that institution is destroyed, it's the basic building block for our society.
In a state where most residents oppose same-sex marriage, many Alabama judges sided with Justice Moore, leaving some license bureaus empty. It's not the first time Justice Moore has been at the center of a battle between state and federal power. In 2003, he refused to obey a federal court order to remove a monument of the 10 Commandments from a courthouse. Civil rights activists say today's battle is only the latest example of Alabama resisting federal power. They compare it to 1963, when then-Governor George Wallace stood in the doorway at the University of Alabama in opposition to federal orders to integrate Alabama schools. Moore denies there is a connection between then and now.
This is not about race. This is not about the recognition that all people are created equal. This is about choice.
No one here in Alabama knows what is going to happen next, Scott. It is a case of judicial chaos. The one thing we do know is that despite that federal order, in most of Alabama right now, same-sex couples cannot get a marriage license.
Chip Reed covering the story, and we'll check back in on this tomorrow. Chip, thanks very much. Now to another big story, the weather and the winter that just keeps piling on. Another storm hit the Northeast today. Boston could have as much as 2 more feet of snow before it's all over. The city has now set a record with nearly 74 inches this season. Jerika Duncan is there.
Throughout the day, the flakes kept falling in Boston, quickly adding height to the mounds of snow everywhere around the city. Cars are buried, transit systems shut down, and people like Joe Mulcahy were forced to either stay inside or dig out.
You shovel again, and you shovel again, and you shovel again, and you shovel again. This is New England.
In the last 2 weeks, contractor Tom Morrell has received more than 200 calls to his roofing business from homeowners fearful that their roofs might cave in.
How long on average does it take you to remove all of the snow off of a roof?
It depends. It depends how big the house is. I mean, if it's a high house, it'll take better part of a day.
The whole day?
Sure.
Before the 600 snowplows can clear the streets from one snowstorm, it seems another piles on. The city's $18 million snow removal budget is already blown, says Mayor Marty Walsh.
By the end of this week, we will more than double our budget, what the snow budget was.
Over the last 24 hours, 6,000 tons of snow has been removed from city streets. 2 snow melters are working nonstop. Since yesterday, they've melted more than 19,000 tons.
We had the blizzard, which arguably was the worst of the 3, but the fact that we had so much snow on the ground that we got the second one 18 inches, and then today, I think they all seem worse than the one before it, just because there's so much snow on the ground.
Boston Public Schools have had 8 snow days this school year, and Scott, officials are now considering having those students make up those missed days either this spring or perhaps in the summer.
Jerika, thank you. Eric Fisher is the chief meteorologist at our CBS Boston station, WBZ. Eric, what's coming next?
Well, Scott, no one alive has seen this much snow in such a short amount of time in the Boston area. The snow is 3 to 5 feet deep across much of the region, and there is not much rest between this storm ending tonight and the next one arriving on Thursday. Let's take a look at what we're tracking. Basically, another clipper system that's going to move to the coast and deepen very rapidly as we head late into Thursday and Thursday night. It's going to be a close call. If it happens quickly, it brings significant snow and wind right back into the same areas that are digging out. A little bit later, a little farther east, still plowable, but not a major event. And this is a big storm to watch because, frankly, the region cannot take more snow. Certainly not a major snowstorm. Behind that clipper, the cold, and this time the cold gets all the way into the deep south. We're talking well below average temperatures all the way down to the Gulf Coast for Thursday into Friday. That takes us into the weekend. So very little melting is expected, and not just the storm we're watching on Thursday, but there may be another one coming as we head toward this weekend. And Scott, it's just unprecedented territory that everyone here is trying to deal with.
Eric Fisher, thank you. More rain is in the forecast in the Pacific Northwest. Over the weekend, more than 7 inches fell in parts of Washington state. In Northern California, gale force wind knocked down trees and power lines, but all that rain hardly put a dent in California's historic drought. Here's what we noticed in the economy today. Oil prices continue to rise. They have been up the past 2 weeks and closed today at $52.86 a barrel. Heading the other way today were stock prices. The Dow lost 95 points, the S&P just under 9. Today, President Obama and a key U.S. ally discussed whether to send American weapons to Ukraine to fend off rebels backed by Russia. Today, a chemical plant was bombed in Donetsk, in the part of Ukraine where Russia has been pouring in weapons and advisors. Mr. Obama met with the German chancellor today, who's been shuttling from Ukraine to Moscow to Washington to try to find a way out. Here's Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett.
President Obama and German Chancellor Angela Merkel agreed to give diplomacy one more chance. Possibly the last, to end Russia's bloody proxy war in eastern Ukraine. The president is considering whether to send lethal weapons to outgun Ukrainian forces.
I have not made a decision about that yet. It's not based on the idea that Ukraine could defeat a Russian army that was determined. It is rather to see whether or not there are additional things we can do to help Ukraine bolster its defenses in the face of separatist aggression.
Russian armed separatists are pounding civilian targets, inflicting carnage and sowing desperation. As CBS's Liz Palmer has reported from the front lines, Russia appears bent on carving up more of the former Soviet republic, ignoring Western demands for a ceasefire.
Unfortunately, Russia has made a decision that I think is bad for them strategically, bad for Europe, bad for the world. In the face of this aggression and these bad decisions, we can't simply try to talk them out of it.
The White House and top European leaders are also reviewing another round of economic sanctions against Moscow.
Until the situation is entirely resolved, we're going to have to keep on trying different things to see if we can get a better outcome.
Chancellor Merkel said the fate of European peace hangs in the balance. Merkel opposes sending weapons into Ukraine, fearing escalation and more bloodshed. Scott, for months President Obama agreed, but is now closer than ever to sending those weapons.
Major Garrett at the White House for us tonight. Major, thank you very much. It got a little touchy in that news conference you just saw when a reporter asked about the revelation last year that the U.S. was eavesdropping on Angela Merkel's cell phone. Here's what Mr. Obama had to say.
Occasionally, I would like the German people to give us the benefit of the doubt, given our history, as opposed to assuming the worst, assuming that we have been consistently your strong partners and that we share a common set of values. And if we have that fundamental underlying trust, there are going to be times where there are disagreements and both sides may make mistakes and there are going to be irritants like there are between friends, but the underlying foundation for the relationship remains sound. Tonight, Kayla Mueller's parents are clinging to the hope that she is alive. The 26-year-old humanitarian from Arizona was kidnapped in Syria in 2013. Friday, the Islamic terrorist group ISIS said that she was killed in a Jordanian airstrike, but provided no proof. Many ISIS fighters are being recruited from Western countries, and tonight, Clarissa Ward has a rare interview with a man who joined ISIS and then broke free. He insisted we hide his face and alter his voice for this report.
A lot of people, when they come, they have a lot of enthusiasm about what they've seen online, what they've seen on YouTube. They see it as something a lot grander than what the reality is. It's not all military parades or victories, you know.
Abu Ibrahim is one of thousands of Westerners who have traveled to Syria to fight jihad. A convert to Islam, he wanted the chance to live under strict Islamic Sharia law. So he joined the most extreme group there, ISIS. During his 6 months with the militants, he saw crucifixions. In December, he witnessed the stoning to death of a couple convicted of adultery.
It was done publicly. There were many hundreds of people there. Seeing someone die is not something anyone probably would want to see, but having the actual Sharia established is what many Muslims look forward to.
It doesn't strike you as medieval?
No.
Brutal?
It's harsh, it's real, but it's Sharia.
Life for Western jihadists under ISIS rule is almost completely subsidized.
They provide housing, food,
salary,
an allowance.
How much?
Initially, it was approximately $50 a month. During winter, it went up to $100, so people could purchase warmer clothing or items for the house.
So you're completely taken care of?
Yes, the bare necessities were given.
But there is one condition. Once you join ISIS, it is virtually impossible to leave.
The restrictions for leaving are difficult. It felt a bit like a prison in that respect.
Honestly, what would happen if you were caught by ISIS trying to leave the Islamic State?
If I was caught, I would probably be imprisoned and questioned.
Why is that? Why? Are they paranoid about spying, or they just don't want people to leave?
They're worried about infiltration.
Those found guilty of spying are executed. Despite the risk, Abu Ibrahim began to look for a way out. He was increasingly disillusioned by the executions of Western aid workers and journalists. He missed his family and felt bored. Jihad wasn't what he thought it would be.
I don't think I miss it. I miss friends I made and the brotherhood, but ISIS itself, no.
Clarissa, we almost never hear from these people. How did you find this man? How did you verify his story?
Well, I first came across Abu Ibrahim on social media, although now all of his accounts have been shut down. And we started to message regularly for more than 7 months online. And I was able to corroborate his story by talking to this network of foreign fighters inside Syria who I communicate with, who also knew Abu Ibrahim.
Clarissa Ward, one of our authorities on Syria. Thank you, Clarissa. The measles outbreak continues to spread. At least 166 cases have been reported in 18 states now and the District of Columbia. Today, Georgia reported its first case of measles since 2012. Turns out the first man on the moon kept a secret stash of mementos from Apollo 11. After Neil Armstrong died in 2012, his widow found a white cloth bag in his closet. Inside were items that he grabbed from the lunar module: power cables, utility lights, and that movie camera that filmed his one small step onto the lunar surface. All of it's now on display at the Smithsonian. And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.